Hi guys! Welcome to week 5. Sorry I'm a couple of days late, but I lost my voice and I sounded quite a lot like a duck trying to eat marshmallows. So I put it off until today. It is the last day of Nanowrimo and I passed 50,000 words 3 days ago, so I'm officially a winner. There was a week there where I thought I wasn't going to do it, but I did it, so that's good. Yeah, it's been a strange week, really, because after the book launch, I sort of felt I needed a few days off. Didn't have them. But I sort of don't remember what I did in those days, so maybe I did have them and I just didn't notice. And with Nanowrimo coming to a close, and with doing mostly editing this week instead of writing or researching, I thought I'd give you a few of my editing tips, or rather things that I do that help me when I edit. So you're not going to like this, because no writer likes this, but the first thing you really have to do if you finish a project and you want to edit it yourself is lock it away. Put it away. If you've just finished NaNoWriMo and you've come to the end of your project, put it away now. Get it out in the new year, because by then it will have the shape of it will have gone a little out of your mind. Because the major problem I find I have with editing, I think a lot of people struggle with this, is because your brain knows what you intended to write, it fills in the words that you've missed. Putting it away gives you that sort of distance from it. Also, you're slightly less emotionally involved with it, because this is the second thing about editing, is you're going to have to be brutal with yourself. There will be some scenes that you're going to have to remove. As you go on, as you look back at a project, you go, oh, I could have written that a little bit better, or I could have done without this bit. Sometimes it's a matter of flow, sometimes it's a matter of you want to improve how you're foreshadowing something. I don't know. So if there's something you want to take out, highlight it or put a box around it. If you're working on the computer, turn that section the same colour as the backing page, so you can't see it. And then when you come back to do your second edit, because you're going to have to do this several times, read it without it there. And if you don't miss it, cut it. If you do miss it, ask yourself if you miss it because you liked it, or if you miss it because it flows. Another thing that I find helps me is reading aloud. Reading to the mirror or reading to a camera and then watching it back does help, because you spot things in the listening. Maybe it's a slight word difference or a rhythm or something to do with flow, or the dialogue somehow has got a bit snarled up. I find reading things aloud really helps me with that. Needless to say, try and do it when you're on your own, because otherwise you do sound like a crazy person. Once you've done your first edit, I would then print it out. Simply because it's very easy to miss things that are on the computer. On a page you can sort of sit back and take your time and you can scribble all over it, which is really good. Another thing I do generally with my second edit is, this is something my mum taught me. She was an English lecturer and she used to teach English literature. So she'd be teaching a text, but she'd probably read it about 14, 15 times, so she knew it back to front. By the time you come to your second edit, that's how you will know your book. So, read it backwards. Start at chapter 1, and then read the chapter backwards, paragraph by paragraph. Because it's that thing where your brain knows where it's supposed to be going. So it disconnects from that, and you start to see the structure of the piece, with the chapters going forwards and the paragraphs going backwards. And then if I need to do it again later on, if I think it needs a serious re-edit, then I will read it chapter by chapter backwards from the end. Because then you get to see if you're foreshadowing properly. You get to see if your characters are developing properly. I'll go away from me a bit. Now, the one thing that editing is really known for is how frustrating it is. Because it is frustrating, but in order to do it well, you're going to have to give yourself time. I have a book that I'm writing right now. I have told myself that I will publish it autumn next year, and I know in my heart of hearts that this is not true. I'd like to have it written by then. Ideally, it would be amazing if it was published by then, but I know my writing schedule, I know how many things get in the way. Maybe I'll have a super burst after Christmas, I don't know, who knows. But the point I'm making is, although I'm optimistic, I am aware that once I've written it, I've got to have at least 6 months, maybe a bit longer, of editing and re-editing time, simply because it takes me that long to forgive myself for the bits that I feel I've messed up on, and it takes me that long to kind of let go the bits I really like but don't work. Also, it takes time to read a book. It takes time to read a book very carefully. So you've got to give yourself the time to get that done. Not least because you don't want to put too much pressure on yourself. You know, even while you're doing it, you're sat there thinking, oh no, I've got to get this done. I want this deadline. You know, I've got to meet this thing. You're not going to be editing properly. So if you have the opportunity to give yourself time, give yourself time. Which brings me on to the next thing, because you also have to leave enough time for other people to read it. And other people's schedules aren't necessarily in line with your own. I mean, generally I give mine to my fellow writers to look through. And they understand things like how fast it needs to be done, but I also understand that they have a million projects. So we'll come to an agreement where I'll proof their book and they'll proof mine. And we'll both say 3 months, or we'll say by the end of this month, or depending on the length of the piece and stuff. And then we'll give it back to one another and talk it through and get together and have a coffee and that kind of thing. Get someone else to read it, because they will be able to spot the bits that your brain is still glossing over. They will also be able to put your mind at rest about the passages that you think are incredibly chewy and clunky. Without fail, the bits that I've found hardest to write, and the bits that I've hated, and the bits that I've highlighted and gone, no, this needs to go, it's just awful. The other people who've read it have gone, no, this is really good, this is my favourite bit, what are you talking about? So, yeah. They've also gone, why have you written this here? This is rubbish. And I've gone, but I love that bit. So, you know, it goes both ways. Find yourself a community of writers. There is no better support than other people who know what you're going through right now. No one will understand it better than someone else who is currently trying to carve their book into submission. If you're going to send it to a publishing house, make sure you've edited it first. I think that's one of the first things that means a book gets rejected, is if you could have the best story in the world, but if the first page is riddled with errors, they're just going to skip to the next one. And as a self-publisher, I'd say you've got to be on the top of your game all of the time, because self-publishing is great, but it does have a bit of a reputation, because not everything that gets published is of the highest standard. So the onus is on you to make sure your stuff is of the highest standard. Once you've got it edited, you've done your first draft, you've done your second run through, you've got a couple of your friends to edit it, you've taken into account what they've said and you've changed things, send it to a professional editor. My first book, House of Vines, I must have read that thing about 12 times. There are still typos in there. I see them every so often. I'll read it back and I'll go, oh well. I'll get that in the next edition. And, you know, professional editors are only human. We don't always see everything. But we are paid to see 99% of things. If you are going to send it to a professional editor, do help them out, give them a timeline that works for both of you. Another thing that's helped me in the past is looked at a couple of books that are similar to what I've written, in style or in tone, and I've looked at the editing that they've used, not just the style and the formatting, because that'll come later, but for example, the way they use particular bits of punctuation. Are they using the British use of quotation marks or the American use of quotation marks, that kind of thing. Likewise, wherever you are in the world, make sure the language you wish to publish in is the one that you are doing your spellings for. Make sure your writing software spell checker is set to the right dictionary. That will help you. There's nothing worse than writing something correctly and then being told it's incorrect and then staring at the word for 10 minutes going, is that the right one? I'm sure there was an R there. So I want to end now with the one that I think is most important when you're editing. I meet a lot of writers. I work with a lot of writers online and in the real world. And the unifying factor between every single one of them is they don't think their work is good enough. Very occasionally you'll come across someone who goes, no, it's amazing, and you're like, well, it could use some work, but that's like 1 in every 1,000. For the most part, I work with people who are very good writers, who are at various stages of learning how to write or picking out their voice among what they're writing. And every single one of them has said to me, I should stop, I shouldn't write, you know, I've looked at someone else's work and they're so much better than me. I don't know why anyone would bother to read this, it's awful, can you tell me how awful this is? Which sort of leads you into going, are you fishing for compliments, or do you genuinely think that it's that bad? Let yourselves off the hook, guys. Nobody's first draft is perfect. I mean, half the time I write, I have written on my desktop, I have, it's a first draft, you can fix it later, in big letters, because that's the truth. Nothing you write is going to come out perfect first time. It's going to feel chewy and clunky and horrible, and there's going to be bits that feel like you're pulling teeth, and there's going to be bits that you read and you read back and you physically cringe at. But it doesn't mean you should stop, and it doesn't mean that what you've written isn't good. It just means maybe on the day you're reading it back you don't like it. Maybe on the day you're writing it you don't like it. Give it a week. Read it again. Give it to someone else. Ask what they'd change. The absolute worst thing you can do is not write, because then you don't have anything to work with at all. So let yourself off the hook. Write. Get it out. Even if you think it's rubbish, it might be rubbish. If it's rubbish, you can change it later, but you've got something to start from. Let yourselves off the hook. You're probably a lot better at this than you think you are. Be kind. Be kind to yourself, and be kind to whoever you're editing for as well, because they are also probably quite insecure about their writing, even though they'd never admit it. So that's just a few tips for editing that I've come up with over the years of editing for myself and editing in a professional capacity. So I'm afraid you'll have to forgive the plug, but if you are looking for a professional editor, Coleman Editing is very, very good. We will look at any kind of writing for you, basically, that there is. Got very reasonable rates. If you wish to contact us, the details will be under the video, as usual, and yeah, get in touch. We can probably help you out. So I hope Nanowrimo was as good to you as it was to me this year. I always say if you have any words on the page that you didn't before you started, that's still a win. So even if you didn't quite make your target, you're still a winner. So I'm going to head off now and take advantage of the sunshine and go and do a bit of a write-in over some tea and cake. So have a good week, guys.